carry the drums to. They say
Travel style.
got you all clapping and tapping and tapping and tapping and tapping and tapping and tapping.
First, a drum set.
B5 come to the travel drum jump. B5 come to the travel drum jump. B5 come to the travel drum jump. B5 come to the travel drum jump.
Here we are. So, good evening, nay, good afternoon on this special early edition of the Do the Math podcast. Good day to you. My name is Devin Morgan, and beside me today is one of our actual real OGs in the Seattle scene, Tribal Productions OG, Seattle musician OG, my man James Browne, a.k.a. Truth, a.k.a. JM Browne, a.k.a. Tribal Archivist, a.k.a. Man in Many Hats. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well.
Right on. So right off the top, just as a matter of introduction, I want to say that you, and I think I've told you this in person, the verse that you have on the Ghetto Children's "I Want to Win" is one of the most revelatory things that I had ever heard.
Revelatory.
Coming out of here.
Wow, thank you. I appreciate that, man. It's, just like everything else in Tribal, man. It was from the heart, man. It was from the heart. And the funny thing is about that record, that particular record, "I Want to Win," is that that's one of the few Tribal records that made it onto a compilation or made it onto anything. Actually, "I Want to Win" didn't, but it did later. But
and got on
whatever.
Mixtapes too.
Yeah.
Like I think the first time I heard that was on a B Mellow tape, maybe.
Yeah, it might have been. I think so. But that was one of the few that wasn't actually started and mainly done in the pharmacy. The pre-production was all done in my studio apartment at my mother's house, in my kitchen. I had a Roland DJ 70. I had my records, some bull crap speakers, and me and Self were just at the pad. And just started it off. I came with the Donny Hathaway drums, and I forget where we got. I think we had the Alice Coltrane bass line or something like that, and went from there. And then brought Vida into it. He came over, and then Vida, man, just
he did what he does.
Yeah, he did what he does, but it's just so crazy because I mean it was a it was a saxophonist. I can't remember the name of it. The saxophonist. Wasn't John Coltrane or someone else, but I had the record, and we were just going through the record, and he was like, "Okay, I want that part. I want that part. I want that part." It was some Dilla stuff, the stuff that you hear people talk about. Dilla, that's what Vida was doing.
Cutting things together and reassembling.
Yeah, but before it was even in the sampler, he was doing this in his head.
Right.
And it was just, I'm just sitting there looking at this dude like, dude, really?
And this is at the tender age of probably how old he was at that point?
Oh, man, I don't know. He wasn't even, might not even have been 20. Yeah, I mean, just, dude, shout out to Vida, man, always, man.
Shout out to Vitamin D, shout out to B-Self.
Dude is ridiculous, and yeah, that's my brother, man, B-Self, man. Where you at, bro? Love you, man. For real. It was just a pleasure being around those brothers and everyone else, Topspin, H-Bomb, Infinite, Fat Mob, Shahrazad, Amilcar, Shonuff, Samson S later on, T-Love, everybody, man, that was involved with Tribal. It was a family affair. And that was the thing that was so beautiful about it. And the fact that you had all these myriad styles within Tribal. We made it a point not to, sound like each other. Right. Like you would have some crews.
And it's apparent. It's completely 100% apparent. It's not like, Wu-Tang where there's kind of like a texture almost that's consistent
a running theme throughout, and same with like the Hieroglyphics crew.
Yep.
Same thing. And it's not like they were exactly the same, but you could tell, they were the same. They were from the same crew. With Infinite sounded nothing like H-Bomb, even though they used to be both in Sensimilla.
Right.
before they separated. You know, Union of Opposites sounded nothing like GC. GC
Right.
sounds nothing really like Fat Mob, and the list goes on. And Samson S, of course, with that booming voice of his, you know, the handsome Samson, you know, and I
Yes.
love. Shout out to Samson S. too,
Shout out
man.
to Samson S.
Yeah, so it was really it was awesome working with everyone, and just it was a really organic experience. You know, we just show up in the basement. You know, it's not even like we knocked on the front door and say, "Oh, hi, Miss Brown. You know, can we come downstairs with the
Right.
group?" It wasn't even like that. He had a side door,
Right.
and we would just go knock on that door, come right in, and boom, you're in the pharmacy.
Yeah.
You're in Vita's room. You know, you sit on his bed. That's why you'll hear, you know, on a lot of the records, you'll hear stuff going on in the background. People clowning and
Yeah.
laughing and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Because we didn't even have a mic like this. We didn't even have a condenser mic. We had a for most of the time, for all those, you know, the golden years of tribal, we had a SM57 microphone, which is a stage mic,
Right.
and that's all we had. Not with no windshield on it, nothing, and that picks up it's a dynamic mic, so it picks up everything
Right.
around it. So you get all that. If you listen to some of those records, you'll hear stuff going on in the background, including "I Want to Win."
See, now I need to do that and give that the headphone test again, just to make sure
Mhm.
there's nothing I'm missing.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
just you know, stuff, people cracking up in the background, other conversations happening. But some of the outtakes, you know, you hear, we're recording. You have to,
Right.
you know, Biden would be telling everyone, shouting at everyone, like, look, shut up, we're recording.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone have to calm down. But it was just, you know, everyone just fell into this one place and gathered and just made great records, great music, and then eventually the circle expanded outside of tribal to where everyone was coming to the pharmacy to record.
Yeah. I
Because
mean,
Vita
that's
just had those golden years, still has those golden years.
indeed
So,
he does. Indeed he does. Yeah, you know, and that kind of organic environment is something that I think as a listener is incredibly apparent, and I've made that point before, and kind of held up as a shining example of that freestyle demo tape. Which is up at triballegacy.bandcamp.com, along with a lot of other music and soon to come some other things. But the freestyle demo tape has always blown me away because it's so unguarded.
mhm. Yeah.
You know, like, because so much there's a long history in hip hop for freestyle, obviously. And you know, you take it back to the early years when it was just the DJs going over the party, and then the next generation where the MC actually separates himself from the DJ, and it's all party-based stuff, and it's all kind of loose and fun or whatever. But once you get through, you know, the New York golden age of like 85, 86, 87, you've entered that area where everything it's very braggadocio, it's very it's all about stratification. You know, it's like, I am establishing myself at this level. You are quite obviously beneath me, and here are a litany of reasons why. You know,
I mean, you know, you had to show your skill, especially when you got to the point where you were making records. I mean, like, for example, I mean, me myself, I was never a very talented freestyler at all. I didn't get into me personally. I didn't get into hip hop because of freestyling, going off the top of the head. I just don't think that fast. I'm just stupid like that. Whatever. I mean, I'm fine with that.
Well,
you know, Rakim was the one who got me into hip hop, and Melly Mel, Melly Mel before that. You know, with poetic verses, not the braggadocious Melly Mel. I loved all that, and I still love it, and I'll still listen to some grind time battles or something. You know.
Yeah.
But you know, I just can't. I don't do that myself. For me, it was always about, you know, the written word and putting it down and making a statement and expressing yourself in the most eloquent way you could. I mean, that's how I was raised. I mean, I read a lot, and I wanted to put down whatever intelligence I had or whatever I had to speak on. I wanted to speak on it in a way that would perk up the ears of the listeners. You know, there's everything about freestyling is great insofar as like what Vita and Bill said, you know, use competition to keep you humble.
Yes.
And that's exactly what it's
Yes.
supposed to be for. You're supposed to use that competition to keep you humble, so that you recognize that you always have to get better and you always have to improve. And that's one of the things about tribal too. We always had a way, a vehicle by which we could, tell each other that, man, that might not be hidden right there, or I like this part of it, but the other part of it, there was never any kind of ego thing where you were afraid to approach, one of the people in tribal, and
that only comes out of trust.
Yeah.
That only that environment only comes from a tremendous amount of trust. And not to get too whoop-de-woo over the whole thing, but let me close the studio door.
Pause for the cause.
That whole thing. That kind of trust environment, I don't know that that's normal for young men to be comfortable with other young men kind of doing that. That's a particular and a unique and a valuable environment.
Well, I think it is. I mean, friends are going to trust each other, but when it comes down to recording something, it may turn into something else, because your ego may get involved, and it should to a degree, because you don't want to put anything out that's whack,
right?
But at the same time, and with the freestyle demos, coming back to that, it shows that we weren't afraid to go out there and just clown. I mean, and there's a lot more. I mean, what you've heard is just literally the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's stuff where literally you have the sampler here, and D has the phone running into the mixer as well, and he's doing prank phone calls. This is like after the Jerky Boys came out in the early '90s. You had we're like, oh, okay, let's do this, and I'd come over, and Vida would have these hilarious things where he would they'd call someone, and he'd have, like, for example, from Kindergarten Cop, something like Arnold Schwarzenegger stuff. Who is your daddy, and what does he do? And he'd have all this stuff laid out on the keyboard, and he could just press at any time, and he'd have, there'd be like minute-long conversations with people, and they wouldn't, it's like, do you not know that someone is just sampling Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you're listening to Arnold Schwarzenegger? Yeah. And then there are other times when Patterson, oh my gosh, Mike Patterson.
Shout out to Mike Patterson.
Yeah. Poetry of Fat Mob, oh my gosh. This dude, just hilarious, man. He's short, dark brother with an afro, and he can do the spot-on Arnold Schwarzenegger impersonation that will make you literally start cracking up and just falling on the ground laughing when he gets going with it.
Yeah.
And he'll be on the phone sometimes doing, freestyling, riffing off of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and just, it's just stuff like that, just hyper creativity.
Yeah.
Always trying to do something creative, even if you're just, just bullshitting and messing around. You're still trying to do something and that's going to be valuable. You may not think of it as valuable, but later on, as you look back on it, oh man, this brought me from here to here.
And there's an interesting idea, that this is all kind of tied to the elevation of the art form, because it's like you go from being the listener to being, the creator, and it seems like there's kind of just this implied idea that the whole point is to continue to try to elevate. And that kind of gets distilled from from other avenues, and when you start creating as a collective, it's like it's the same thing, and that's that only it happens because there's a certain amount of respect to what you're trying to do. Your respect for the process, right?
Yeah.
So because of that, you say, oh well, you're saying, well, I'm not going to freestyle, but I'm going to try to attain kind of some pinnacle of expression with what I'm saying.
Right.
It's like right on the screen right there. You're in that I Want to Win verse of yours. It goes, quote, "Myself is the source of my regression. Indeed, myself is oppression personified." That's heavy. That's really, really heavy, and it's really you can't listen to that and not be like, that is an incredibly heartfelt sentiment, and it's wonderfully constructed, and and that's kind of the pinnacle of what this thing can be. And I just and not to put on my old man pants, but
Hey, man, feel free, man.
but
it's all good.
It worries me if we're no longer kind of pushing forward that idea of trying to elevate, the means and the quality and the expression. If that kind of starts to go away and degrade, which is a gradual process, then all of a sudden you don't have that kind of relationship where it's like it gets distilled to you from when you're still a listener before you start creating, and then you go to a creative and you're putting out music, but you don't really, that code is no longer there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And things can go incredibly sideways.
Yeah, it always comes back to just what's your intention, what's it worth to you to be called an MC?
Right.
that Show Enough came up with that, and that's that was one of our records in Union of Opposites, and it's just it still holds true today, even more so when you look at the level of quality that's out there. What people consider now, when I talk to like my sons, one of whom is 22, and the stuff he listens to, Drake and this, that, and the third, and what he thinks are bars, and no disrespect to Drake or anything like that, but it's like, dude, you want to hear some bars? Let me play you some Organized Confusion.
Right.
Let me play you some Tribe Called Quest. Let me play you some Outkast.
Yeah.
And Gangstar, and some of that stuff they latched, my sons latched onto, and I was happy for that because that's kind of my job. If I'm going to show them some music, I'm going to show them some quality stuff, And when they latch onto it, as a father, you're always, happy for that, because it makes things continue where you can see that there's a level of quality and a bar that's set, and you want to always at the very least that's the standard, and you recognize that even though there's stuff you might like that's out there on the radio, it's of a substandard comparatively.
Yeah.
And it's okay to have all different types of hip hop. Hip hop is not monolithic, and it never has been.
Right.
I mean, even within tribal, you had Fat Mob, who was doing jokes a lot, but still, it was hilarious. It was fun to listen to.
Yeah.
And even beyond tribal, I grew up with Heavy D. I grew up with the Fat Boys. I grew up with Biz Markie. It was okay to have all that, even to a smaller degree. Like Eazy-E, even though he wasn't writing his rhymes, there would be like some hilarious stuff up in there.
Yeah.
And E40, who actually did have lyrics. When you listen to his stuff, it's like, dang, this dude got lyrics. But on the surface, he's coming with this thing, slang, my man. All this. That's just the veneer.
Yeah.
But down beneath that, there's something there. But you have to be able to go beneath the veneer. And if you can't go beneath the veneer because, as a listener, like nowadays, for example, you're caught up in the marketing hype and as what you're supposed to think is good or what you're supposed to think is the end all be all, you miss out on a lot of stuff.
Yeah. It's funny when you were talking about like music that sticks with your children and kind of like that moment of achievement. It's my son, who is 5 years old right now, the first hip-hop record that I got him to sink his teeth into was Tribe's Lucky Lucian. And it's so
nice.
It's weird, what they kind of find, whatever that thing that hits like in the back of your head and it gets like that, that release where it's like, oh, this touches something, because it's like I've tried other, since, well, it's kids, I'll throw like some, some audio too at them. Because Milk's got a really interesting, unique voice. It's like a nice drum pattern that'll get him to, or or even like Posse on Broadway. It's like that's an easy record to get into, and it's got kind of that weird, like funky Godzilla sound, and struck out, and Tribe's Lucky Lucian is the one that did it. It's like, how did that happen?
You never know. With my kids, it was Gangstar, which was awesome to me.
Yeah, right.
But with someone else's kids, it could be something else. But it's all good as long as they find something, your job as a parent, and as your job as a musician, is to expose people to something, forms of music that they may not have heard before. And I think hip hop has done a marvelous job, an absolute marvelous job of doing that to the highest degree. And they have a special running on TV, I think on CNN or something, or the Tanning of America,
Yeah.
where they basically tell you straight out that Obama got elected president because of hip hop. And I agree with that, because how else do you have a situation where you have people who, white kids who live out in the suburbs, black kids who live in the hood, or in the suburbs, wherever, and all Asian kids, whatever kids, and they're all fixated on Tribe Called Quest. They're all fixated on Gang Starr. They're all fixated on Wu-Tang Clan.
Public Enemy early too.
I mean, just having all kind of influence. I mean, Public Enemy. You had punk rock bands and metal bands just chomping at the bit to try to sound like Public Enemy because it was so hard. Because it was so new, so different than anything they had ever heard. And from that, I mean, you get something like Limp Bizkit, but you also get, a whole generation of kids whose minds are open to things people of color have to say. Yeah. And you have a whole generation of kids in the hood who become more open to what people outside of the hood have to say. And they begin to think alike to a degree. There's never any kind of monolithic discussion, but they have something in common. That hip hop is that thread that weaves in between all these people. And
you're exactly right.
Open-mindedness, and you get to the point where you can consider having a black president, where you can consider having black mayors and congressmen and stuff. It just translates to different spheres of life outside of the music.
Yeah, I mean, you hear Chuck say, Elvis was a hero to most, but he never met, motherfuck him and John Wayne. Mm-hmm. And there's no kind of artifice in the way that that's put forward. And if you're really listening, you kind of have to start to consider, like, I can say myself as a Caucasoid. You listen to that line, it's like, okay, that's a valid perspective that somebody has on two people that otherwise held up as just kind of paragons of America. Mm-hmm. And I am in no way, shape, or form informed enough about Elvis to try to debate either side of that. Mm-hmm. But the fact that it kind of enters your conception. It starts you thinking. Yeah. And I'll make a point here about that. Part of that is done. It makes you think because you conceptualize rap music, hip hop music as a product of communities of people of color, or more specifically, you'd say African American communities, right? And that's where the authorship is. And I think as an old head coming into it at the time, that was inescapable, and that's probably the way that it should be. And the thing that freaks me out sometimes is kids that lose sight of that, and the more that that kind of hip hop culture becomes just kind of a product of like just the capitalist machine, and it's the way that we're going to sell hot dogs and soda pop, and we're going to sell jerseys to you.
Yeah, it's become co-opted just like any other music that came before it.
Yeah, and you start to lose, that idea that this is a product of very specific groups of people in specific communities, and you don't appreciate the privileged position that you are to be able to enjoy that. Just to take it in. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, there's no basis of respect anymore for giving a shit, because it's like, well, this is just something that I do. They're rapping to me, trying to sell me, Skechers sneakers.
Right.
So I don't give a shit if I just whore out the whole thing.
Yeah, the connection is not there anymore.
Yeah.
The feeling is not there to where you feel as though you're a part of the movement and part of something special.
Yeah.
It's just it's the status quo now.
Yeah, and I don't. The thing I don't understand is why why we have to dance around the fact that hip hop comes from the predominantly African American community. That is the genesis of it. Like, that's where it comes from, and we can't, acknowledging that doesn't devalue my ability to appreciate it as someone is not a member of that community.
No, not at all. I mean,
but I hear people that are like, anybody can rap. Anybody can. You can get into this. It's like, no, you can't.
Well,
I mean,
I would kind of disagree only in the sense that, I mean, it's been shown. I mean, if you are someone who has not allowed yourself to fall victim, like I'm speaking of like a young youth,
the young youth rocking a little too.
Yeah, low goose, but of a youth that's listening to hip hop and has taken it upon him or herself to look beyond what's just being presented to him or her, and seeking out, the history, and especially with the internet today, it's fairly easy. But you still have to make that leap. You still have to make that conscious leap that I want to see what's beyond this, that I sense that there's something beyond this, and I'm going to find out what it is.
Yeah.
Now, when they have that spark and they find out what's there, the ocean of quality material that's there from the past, and even not to disregard the present too, because there's still cats out there making stuff that's extremely quality, but it's gone back to the underground. It's gone back to the early 80s again, where you have to seek and find it. And with the internet, there's such a proliferation of it because it's all out there. You have to really just swim through all of it to get to it. But once you find that, then it's a beautiful thing because it expands your horizons.
You're right. You're right. I dig that.
Just like it's traveling without moving. To take something from Dune. You're on the internet, you're finding something from somewhere else. I mean, I found stuff from Russia. I found stuff from Ukraine and from Europe. Whereas in the past, as I was growing up, there was like Derek B, and there was like the Cookie Crew, and that would be that would be maybe Maestro Fresh West from Canada. Yeah. And that would be the pretty much it. But now there's everything. So everyone is invited. Hip hop is completely inclusive. Yes, it was started by people of color, African Americans, and of course our Latin brothers too.
Right.
Can't forget that. Who did stuff, and even if you want to include graffiti as a part of it, there's white people who were there right at the start too. At the start too as well. I mean, you can never discount that. I mean, the oldest of the old school graffiti heads might not even consider that. I don't even think they even considered themselves to be part of this hip hop movement because they predated it. Right. They predated it, and they weren't even listening. They were listening to freaking Average White Band. They were listening to Zeppelin and all this other stuff, and that's all good but that what they created became a part of it because it all was encapsulated in one place in New York City, the South Bronx in particular, but the whole city in general, and it just spread out first to the tri-boroughs and then to the whole eastern seaboard, and then just boom everywhere. Right. Because it was such a powerful thing that you could rap over a drum machine and just speak your power over that. It was extremely empowering. I mean, I'm listening to Melly Mel, rap, like Beat Street Breakdown. Rows of eyes disguised as windows, looking down on the poor and the needy. Miles of people marching up the avenue, doing what they got to do just to get by. I'm living in the land of plenty and many, but I'm damn sure poor. I don't know why too much. This is from New York, and then you have Beat Street Breakdown. These type of things spoke to me as a listener. I mean, I was listening to Rapper's Delight and listening to Fresh Wildfire and Bold and all these other party raps. And I was digging that too. But when I heard that stuff, that stuff spoke to me in a way that made me want to do it. And then when Rakim came out, I was like, that's over. I got to write some rhymes, And I wrote my first rhyme in '88 at Garfield High School. Shout out to the Bulldogs, Mighty Bulldogs. Yeah. I know you're from Franklin, but it's okay, man.
It's all great.
I'm not.
It's all great. It's like, we've talked about, I think we talked about it on the show before. It's like, I in no way, shape, or form can kind of discount the contribution of Garfield High School to Seattle's hip hop music scene. You just can't. It's absolutely indelible. It is right there. It's just like it's a hive. It's an
Yeah,
absolute hive.
it's
that,
crazy, and the thing is, it's even more crazy about it is it's not even just hip hop. It goes back
right,
back
to
Quincy
Jimmy and
Jones,
Quincy, yeah.
to Quincy Jones, Garfield High, to Jimi Hendrix, to Macklemore, obviously, nowadays. So it's just been a hotbed of
Yeah.
talent that's come out of that particular high school, and it's amazing the amount. I mean, you got Kun Love DJing too. Shout out to Big Kun. Yeah, that's my dude. I mean, just and then also too, while we're on this subject real quick, I just need to give a shout out as well. We lost one of our OG soldiers, original b-boy in the Seattle hip hop community, Dorian Corey Dinish. He passed away a little while ago, and he was one of the very first b-boys, one of the very first that I saw. I mean, just
A real like a
rocking the gear, being a total proponent of hip hop culture in the early '80s,
yeah,
and
died
just
in the
being
wool
a
originator.
and just an icon, and yeah, and he was a graffiti writer, he was an artist, and he was an all around great human being to be around. Um, and I learned a lot from just watching the stuff that he did. Uh, and he passed away, and he's gone, but he's not forgotten. I want to give a special shout out to him, definitely.
Shout out to
Rest in
Tilla.
peace.
Shout out to Onye. Um, yeah, when we were talking before we started about kind of this idea that in Seattle the African American community is so small and so compressed,
Yeah.
and it occurs to me that uh, things like Solo Dope being a guy that is just like showing you how to do this
Mm.
is not that dissimilar to Vitamin opening up the pharmacy and being like, we're going to create this space and you can do with it as you will, to
Indeed.
a certain extent.
Indeed, and just and just thinking about it, I mean, all the people that have come through that house, it's amazing, and I have to give a strong shout out to Miss Brown. I mean, just how did you put up with that? It's all these people coming through, and just imagine if she would have just, and she came close a few times, so don't get it twisted, but if she had just shut that down and said, I don't want all these, people up in my house, boom, it's over, then it might have been over.
Yeah.
Or because we didn't have any place else to go to where we would have been able to, with the space and the ability to hang out and chill and just and be up in there for hours and hours and hours, even into the the late hours of the evening, creating.
Yeah.
But
That's it's a thin kind of line of like something very small could have changed her perspective on what you guys were doing and allowing that to happen. And then what do we lose?
Yeah.
Do we lose just a humongous portion of like Seattle's entire second wave of hip hop? And
I mean, there was other stuff around.
Yeah, for sure.
Keith was doing his thing with his studio. I mean, there was other people out there with studios, but they were like real studios. They were not necessarily places where you can just come and just relax and just create and just be organically without being on the clock.
Right.
It wasn't a business. Vita didn't charge anybody for the the longest time for beats at all. I mean, nobody in tribal. He didn't never got paid.
Yeah.
And then outside of that, I don't really know what he was doing. I mean, I always told him, look, man, you need to charge something. Get a little something for your trouble for doing this. But Vita's just a giving person. I mean, he's a giving person, and it makes sense that his mother gave of her house for all of us to be creative and to grow as men and as creative individuals in our home. But he's always been like that. Vita has always been the type of person to give, and because of that, Seattle hip hop in general and tribal specifically, benefited enormously from that generosity.
And I mean, being nice, and being generous with your time and your space and your, and your ideas allows this thing to flourish. That's a crazy, crazy thing. It's a very minor personality trait it's incredibly important. So be nice. Don't be a dick.
Indeed.
So
it goes a long way.
So tell me about what it was like for you, because I know that you have some amount of separation in terms of age from the rest of the guys who were in tribal, and that must have been an interesting thing, being seeing these kids that are young men, just barely adults, and you've got a little bit of a space away from them, and being able to kind of see that all transpire.
Right. Yeah, I'm the oldest in tribal by probably at least about 2.5 year gap between me and like B Self, and after that, I mean, I went to school to Garfield with B Self, and that's where I met him. I mean, I was actually in tribal before there was tribal. I mean, there was my man Enye Wakoma, shout out to Enye, and B Self, DJ Capabilities, my man Dan Turner, who was also at Garfield at the time, and my man Cliff Melrose, Father Rhyme.
And in a 2-3 year gap when you're that young that's important. It's significant.
Yeah. Really, it was just, and it wasn't even so much that anyone looked at me as being this older person or as being this big brother. It wasn't like that at all. I was one of the dudes.
Yeah.
I was one of the dudes. I was just like them, trying to make something out of myself musically.
Right.
The only difference is, I had an apartment. The only difference is I had a regular job. So I wasn't at the pharmacy all the time, but I was there when I wasn't at work. Well, I was at that pharmacy.
Right.
And we were out there kicking it or doing what we do.
Right.
Doing a show or putting on a show, or going to see someone DJ a show, whatever. But we rolled in packs. And just we'd all crowd into Barry's Topspin's Hyundai Excel.
Hyundai.
I don't know how in the world. I mean, you had H-Bomb and Topspin, who were 6 foot plus.
Yes.
And Vida, who's 6 foot plus.
Yes.
I'm a shade under 6 foot and stocky. We're all fit, and maybe one other person, maybe B Self, we're all up in that thing and just I'm praying to God that thing just doesn't fall.
Pop the tires.
Pop the axle.
Yeah, right.
Because it's. But we did what we had to do. We got where we needed to go. Whether it was digging, whether it was traveling, to try to better ourselves, better our position as far as the music is concerned, like to the Gavin convention and things like this, and things just happened for us. I mean, they just didn't happen for us in a major way to where we just blew up. But there were always opportunities there. I mean, GC. Ghetto Children, they had a demo deal with Geffen. It's not like they were just, on this island of Seattle and they were not being noticed by anyone.
Very true.
Mike Clark, big shout out to Mike Clark.
Shout out to Mike Clark, a.k.a. Mike C, a.k.a. Rap Attack co-host with Ness, who did a service to, if those guys don't get keys to the city or like a medal or just some kind of commendation, the reality is that Ness and Mike are so vital to this whole thing.
Yeah, they gave a platform, and especially Mike. I mean, because Mike was who we interfaced with, a lot. Whether it was at Music Menu, which is where I met him, or Beverly's Records and Tapes, something like that. But definitely Music Menu. He facilitated a lot of things. He was a cheerleader for us.
Yeah.
He loved the fact that we were out there, and it's not just tribal. This is anyone local in hip hop. Period. That's why he has all that stuff, and he's kept it all.
Yeah.
He was a cheerleader for everyone. He would just, to encourage you always. And one of the things he did is he facilitated. GC getting a demo deal with Geffen. They went down to California. They actually worked with the Dust Brothers,
which is such a crazy thing because in retrospect, you look at all of the music that came out of Tribal that Vitamin touched, and it all has such a, it's got his tone, it's got his hands are on it.
Yeah.
And it's such a funny, like like a major label record company thing to say, oh well, we're gonna take Ghetto Children, we're gonna send them down to the Dust Brothers. Not that the Dust Brothers are whack. Quite frankly, I would argue that like Tone Loc's first record, if you take Wild Thing and the other like poppy joint off there, that's a great rap record for real. Like their production is on point. But it wouldn't be the Ghetto Children without Vitamin on the boards. It just wouldn't be.
Right. And it just didn't, for whatever reason, it just, it didn't work out. They came out of there with two I think just two joints that were, clean stuff that I'd heard before, but it were cleaned up.
Right.
At their studio and whatnot, and it just didn't pass muster with Geffen, whatever. How many times has a record company passed on something that was gold?
Right.
It's all good, but the fact, the only point I'm trying to make is that moves were made to try to get us out, and or at least some of us. GC was always, in my estimation, the core of Tribal, because Vita is the backbone of Tribal, and GC was they were influenced by De La Soul. That was both of them really loved De La Soul, and me too. But it really, the intelligence in their rhymes, the changing of styles in their rhymes, in their patterns and all that, the just trying to progress with each thing they did. I mean, we'd come down to the pharmacy, and they would always make cuts like in batches of 2 or 3.
Right.
And it's like all these shits are just incredible. You're just like, what the fuck? And but it makes you want to do better yourself.
Right.
But it was just a marvelous thing, walking in there and just hearing all this stuff that's just that's literally on the same level as the stuff that's out there nationally and internationally.
Without a doubt.
And that's the way I always felt, and that's where records like I Want to Win come from, because we wanted to win.
Yeah.
And we with myself, like with the lyrics that you mentioned earlier, I was just talking about, making sure that I'm not the one that's holding me back. And it's all about introspection. We were always looking within, especially B-Self and Vita and myself, and and that was our means of trying to push forward in what we were doing, and to stay humble, and to elevate. They did it at a level that was just crazy. GC is, they worked together so well.
Yeah.
So well. But as time goes by, things change, people change, and you have life to deal with, and sometimes that means that you have to put the music to the side, and you have to deal with the rhythms of life as opposed to the rhythms that that you're hearing on the record that you want to sample.
For sure.
Yeah. So it's all good, but but it's there. It's stuff like this, like the Bandcamp site. What you're doing with that, is a repository for people, anyone who wants to hear the history. I'm hoping that one day, that it would, it might be able to include, even beyond Tribal. I mean, and the the whole of Seattle hip hop history, because it's very, very deep.
For sure, and it's and I'm a self-described rap nerd, and incredibly devoted to this Seattle thing from my era. But the truth of the matter is that there is a whole another side of it that I'm honestly not that familiar with. Like, I know Emerald City, and I know that kind of took place, but I'm not intimately familiar with it, and that's only like a 4 or 5 year difference, or a little previous to where it kind of comes into where I come into contact with it. And so if you're out there and you are an archivist of late 80s rap, you can do the same thing that I've done. You can set up a band camp, you can rip stuff up, put it out there for free, and tell people about it, because the reality is that Seattle is an incredibly musical city. We have a long lineage,
Always has been.
Always have been. And you can look at, a project like the Weedle's Groove thing that Supreme was involved with, kind of reintroducing all those soul and funk records.
Yeah. One of which had Vida's dad on it.
Right, because
the apple
again,
didn't fall too far from the tree.
Because Seattle is again such a compressed community when it comes to people of color, that you can almost take a direct line of the Browne family. It's just kind of like it's like this tree that's at the center of so much, and even if you when you get to the guys that are kind of the next generation, after tribal, it's incredibly apparent to me that that stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum. Seattle is an incredibly fertile ground for music. And these scenes kind of perpetuate themselves, and a lot of it, until you get back to guys like Solo Doe, who are kind of originators. We were talking about before, of Ness starting the K-Fox, the radio show in, what was it, 80?
Fresh Tracks, I think it was 1980. On K-Fox.
Yeah.
And I mentioned it to you earlier. I mean, that's just a year later than Marley Marl. I mean, not Marley Marl, but Mr. Magic, who had the first rap radio show ever in New York, and that was '79, if I'm not mistaken. So that's only a year later. Right. So Ness was able to actualize, a hip hop show in Seattle, 3,500 miles away from New York.
Yeah.
With the same records. Maybe he didn't get the exclusives as quick as someone who lived there. But the fact of the matter is, how many of us came up listening to Rap Attack? Fresh Tracks evolved into Rap Attack.
Right.
And shout out to Glenn Boyd too.
Shockmaster.
Because Shockmaster was the one with the show originally. And then Nasty Ness came on board, and then it just blossomed from there. My understanding, and that was the way you heard music.
Yeah.
The hip hop, that was the way you heard it.
Yeah.
And then you would go out to Music Menu, and Mike Clark would have that joint for you, or he'd put you up on some other stuff.
On something new, yeah.
Yeah. You form a relationship with him, and then you're off and running. You get your collection going, and you got your music going, and everything's all right with the world.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. It is. It's crazy. Just because I don't think there's a general conception that Seattle is that way. The general conception is Quincy, Jimmy, grunge, and probably now Macklemore and Sir Mix-a-Lot maybe gets an honorable mention.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's others like there's the Wailers and stuff like that. Others. I mean, it depends on who you talk to, of course. But I don't think Seattle's all that much different from any other city of its size, maybe in the United States, insofar as having a music scene. But I do know that Seattle's is underappreciated as a music mecca. I mean, my mother is 82 years old, and she used to go see Quincy Jones. She's from the same time period as far as age as Quincy Jones is.
Right.
And she used to go see him at the YMCA perform. Not him as a bandler, but he would be there in the band.
Right.
And she would tell me about all these different clubs that there used to be on Jackson and thing. And there's books about those things now that you can go read, like 23rd and Jackson After Hour or something like that. Mm-hmm. Books that you can find out about the history of Seattle music from that perspective, from a jazz perspective. There's others that are out there from, probably from a rock perspective, and then you have Heart and stuff like that too.
Yep.
I mean, you have groups, in every decade almost, you have groups from Seattle that have made it big.
Yeah.
So it's not like we've just been this complete backwater, that no one knows about. But the city has not been talked about as a music mecca, and it deserves props as that, because when you have all these, when you have one person, one or two groups every decade coming out that's making it big, you have to know that underneath there's about 2 or 3 dozen other groups that are of extreme quality that haven't gotten that recognition.
Yeah.
That's just, that's just logic as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And that's the same in any city. I mean, when you have a city like, or a place like the Bay Area. I mean, the Bay Area is known as the music mecca because there was just so much stuff coming out of there.
Relentless tide of music that came out of the Bay.
That couldn't be denied, starting from probably the 60s on, moving forward, because you had so much stuff coming out of there. And you had it was like Seattle in the 90s with the grunge, because you had Santana that just took over Woodstock, and everyone's like, wow,
who's that guy?
What is this group? It's just they stole the show, and let's go find out. And you have the Grateful Dead, and you have everyone, Cold Blood, everyone. You have a whole series of people that got signed off of that. With Seattle, you had a whole series of people that got signed off that for grunge, and that's fine. But with Seattle, when Mix-a-Lot hit, you didn't necessarily have all these record companies coming over to Seattle to try to find the next Mix-a-Lot or the next rap sensation or whatever. It just kind of he was kind of a one-off. He was considered a one-off, but he was like I was mentioning to you before, he was successful way before Baby Got Back. Big, super successful, $1 million seller.
Yeah.
Just like everyone's on the Macklemore train. Macklemore is the king of the earth right now, and and he's worked hard to get to that point. It didn't just happen for him, and that's the thing. There's people out here who are bitter about whatever Macklemore, and I'm just like, dude, the guy worked hard, and he actually has some spits. He has some rhymes.
Mm-hmm.
Am I the biggest fan of Macklemore or anything like that? No, I'm not. But there are things about his music, some parts of it that I really, really dig a lot. The message that he brings. Some other messages maybe not so much, but he has a nice balance. And he's been doing it. He's used social media to build his audience for years. He's had million hit YouTube videos before the Heist ever came out.
Before Thrift Shop, yeah.
So he's paid his dues insofar as I'm concerned, and nobody can tell me anything about that. And I wish the man nothing but luck and respect, in his continued success in his journey. And as far as I'm concerned, he's a fruit that's come from the tree that Tribal maybe not planted, but
watered
grew
profusely.
Yeah.
Nourished.
I mean, he says it in the Town video.
Yeah.
I mean, do the math. Tribal. I mean, he's on record as saying this is one of his influences. This is the physics too.
Yeah.
And
shout
there's
out
probably
to the physics.
They're filthy. Are you kidding me?
Oh
These
boy.
dudes are dope, man. And there's stuff that I've heard from them that I'm just like, wow, and it just makes a big old stupid smile come on my face, because it's like I can hear the stuff that they've done. And I'm talking about the early stuff. The stuff now is just they're on their own level now. But I can hear that stuff having come from the Pharmacy. That's and I'm trying to pay them a compliment with that, because the quality is there, the love is there, and it's just continuations. So it's a beautiful thing to see. But at the same time, I would love to see more bands, more groups, more individuals, get more recognition. Like for example, Porter Ray. Porter Ray's filthy.
Porter Ray is incredibly filthy. That kid is like a beacon of light.
Yeah. Shout out to Porter Ray. I don't know you, but I like your stuff, man. Your stuff is dope.
Yeah.
And shout out to someone who's with you that I do know, my man Cesar Clemente, who I've known since he was a wee little lad.
Yeah.
Shout out, man.
Yeah. If you were
Good
not
stuff,
on,
man.
if you were not
Keep
on
it going.
white gold, black gold, and rose gold,
Get on it, man. Look it up.
Go get it.
There's filthy stuff coming out of the town. There's filthy stuff coming out of the area, and I believe there always will be. It's just that you have to make more of an effort now to find it because you have such a glut of stuff on the internet.
Yeah.
And most of the stuff is available to you on the internet, if not free, for nearly free.
Yeah.
And you can get, and it's well-made stuff. It's stuff that will make you think. It's stuff that will put a smile on your face. There's stuff that might get you through some hard times. I mean, and these are all the things that music is supposed to do. I mean, I saw a documentary about Marvin Gaye when he was living in Belgium.
Before the Sexual Healing record, when he was working on it. Yeah.
And there was a quote in there. I don't remember it exactly, but the meat of it is, an artist is not really an artist unless he or she is trying to use their art to enhance mankind, basically to uplift mankind in some way with their art, and that's something that I've always believed in. The groups that I grew up listening to, from Earth, Wind and Fire, to all the jazz artists, Miles, all of this stuff is meant to reach inside of here and to enhance it and make it grow and flower, not to just raise your fist in the air and just party on and just get blitzed or stoned or whatever, and that's all you do with your life. Music is supposed to be inspiring, in my estimation. There's always room for stuff that's for parties, but in general, I think that art and music in particular needs to do that.
Yeah,
and there always has to be an outlet for the people who are involved in making that type of music.
Yeah, I mean, and there's something. It's like there's a recognition of what human beings are capable of, and it's transmitted through song. It's like we're capable of these immense, vistas of happiness and joy and introspection, and we can communicate all of this through songs.
Yeah.
And through a vast, a palatial landscape of how those songs are constructed, right? Because there's, I'm sure that people not in the United States have music that comes from there that would sound alien to my ears, but they have the same, the same. It touches them the same way.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can listen to. Boy, I can't remember. We might have talked about this the other night, but I may have had a beer or two during the recording of this podcast. Shout out to my brother Freedom. Episode 3 of the Do the Math podcast may or may not ever be seen, but if it's not, let me point out Camp Lowe's Lucchini, right? So when that song first hits, when those horns... Those horns that come from a record by a group called Dynasty called Adventures in the Land of Music, which is just such a beautiful song title. Yeah. It's like it's so on the nose. Adventures in the Land of Music. Mm-hmm. And it so it comes in with these horns. But there is something about that horn line.
Immediate feel good. Immediate endorphin rush.
Yes. It's touching. It creates, it vibrates a feeling within you that is just, it's beautiful. Yeah. It's an absolutely beautiful expression. Yeah. And you can have that through the OG record, and then you can have that interpolated into the Camp Low record. Yeah.
Which is a party record.
Yeah.
Which is a party record. Even though in their rhymes they are going a little bit deeper than that.
Yeah.
It's not just about let's just get money only. I mean, it's it's a metaphor as well, but just hearing it, I mean, that record when it was out, and Top or Vita would push that out into the crowd. Oh my God!
Yeah,
I mean, just people losing their minds, man. And it's supposed to be like that because it's a joyful noise. It's a joyful noise.
Man, say that. And I think. On kind of a different feeling, but the same, a different quality, but the same quantity of vibration. PE's "Fight the Power" has always been a song that I don't know how you can casually listen to that I really don't. I don't know how you could do that, because when I listen to it, I either want to run through a brick wall, or I want to write something that's very powerful, or I want to.
You want to do something.
You want to do
You want
something.
to do something. It makes you get up and want to do something.
Through song.
And even Rebel and Bring the Noise
Yeah.
before that were the ones that did it for me. I mean, just like, oh, are you kidding me? Just the force of that music. It's undeniable. You have to listen to it. You have to absorb it, because it's a rush. It's a rush that you can't avoid feeling.
Yeah. It's a wonderful thing, the spectrum of what can be accomplished by singing songs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a simple thing. It's something we do as children,
Yeah.
and it's something that
Chuck taught me my history. As a black man, he taught, he with the things he said in the records, when he mentioned Joanne Chesimard, even when he mentioned Farrakhan, I had heard the name before, but I didn't
Marcus
really know,
Garvey.
Garvey. I mean,
Yeah.
these things, I went and I heard these, and then I went out and studied, and this is, of course, pre-internet. Nowadays it's easy, and you find it real quick.
Yeah.
But I had to go to the library to find out, or ask the librarian, and or ask somebody, one of my elders at the bookstore or something, who's this person? Who's this person? Can you point me in the direction? What should I know about this person? Or what's a book I can read? Oh, you want to read this book, or about Huey Newton? Oh, you want to read Revolutionary Suicide, or things like this.
Soul on Ice.
Yeah, Soul on Ice. Eldridge Cleaver. You want to keep the cycle of knowledge going, and that's one thing that Public Enemy in particular did so well. I mean, there was other groups like X-Clan and that also talked about some things, but PE was the one that really did it for me first. And man, just and doing it in such an innovative way, and it was the perfect storm. I mean, you had Chuck D with his booming voice, and Chuck is old. Chuck,
right.
When he made the record, he was almost 30 years old.
Right.
The man was born in 1960.
Right.
So he's speaking from the perspective of an older person, but reaching people who are half that age.
Yeah.
And completely influencing them to try to spark their pursuit of knowledge.
Yeah. And that's a crazy thing, because being that age during that kind of culmination of, like you say, just this perfect storm of cultural accessibility and in the vehicle for getting it out there, it's like Chuck very well could have just been like, nah, I'm not with these new kids. He could have not, and he wasn't. And it's like we were talking about that tanning documentary earlier. Society in general owes a debt of gratitude to Public Enemy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like to a rap group.
Yeah. To hip hop, to hip hop in general, and Public Enemy in particular.
Yep.
Certainly, and groups like them. I mean, it's not to discount anyone else, but I mean, hip hop really was a music that sparked a lot of brain cells in many different ways, in seeking knowledge, and with just the rhymes, looking at things from a different perspective, which is in and of itself, we can become knowledge when you incorporate it into your daily life, and it expands your horizons of the way you see the world.
Yep. So talking about music and this kind of joyful expression, this beautiful noise. Tell me about house music. because I didn't know I didn't know JM Browne, the kind of the soulful house singer. I knew Truth, the MC.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a revelation to me about that kind of transformation. I don't know what you would call it, transformation, maybe a corny expression for it, but it's interesting.
Well, it's weird because like I mentioned Earth, Wind and Fire earlier. Mm-hmm. I have 3 older sisters, and each of my sisters, the youngest one is 6 years older than I am, 6.5 years.
Okay.
So They got some years on me.
Right.
But the middle sister, my sister Mary, she was the one who was on the Funkadelic, and I'm talking early Funkadelic, not P-Funk. I mean, later
When
on.
it was still Parliament and Funkadelic.
When it was Funkadelic, before
Yeah.
they were able to use Parliament again.
Yeah.
So this is, early 70s, and then Earth, Wind and Fire and Marvin Gaye and stuff. She brought all that stuff into the house.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother happened to latch on to Earth, Wind and Fire, specifically the song "Keep Your Head to the Sky,"
Okay.
which is off the Head to the Sky album. She really loved that song, and she actually purchased the album. And as a result, I got to hear a lot of it. And then subsequent albums that came out, I would get every one. We'd go to Fred Meyer or go to some record store and get them. But it was always about these soulful vocals, Philip Bailey and Maurice White, and I was singing before I could talk.
Really?
So singing's always been a part of my life, way before rapping was, way before that. So I've always had that inside me. So I learned to sing, literally mimicking Philip Bailey and Maurice White, singing Reasons and singing, Happy Feelings and singing, Fantasy and all these classic, unbelievable
monster records.
Yeah.
Monster records.
Which were, and looking at the album covers and just pouring over the album covers.
Oh, the imagery!
And the Japanese guy, they got to airbrush the record covers, and just all the stuff they had. It was a total package. The posters, the liner notes.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like Vida and just like Top, and so I would be that guy, going through the liner notes, studying everything. But as far as the singing is concerned, that's always been in me. But house in particular, I got exposed to house pretty early, actually. I got exposed to house when I was attending Nathan Hale High School in the mid-'80s. I started there in September of '84.
Okay.
Giving away my age big time, but it's all good.
It's all good, player.
There was a cat there. His name was Gustavo Rojas, and he had come from Chicago, which is the birthplace of house music.
Right.
And he had brought with him, he was a graffiti artist as well, and he was dope. I tried to get him connected with Solo Dough, but it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But he also brought with him cassette tapes from the mix shows that they had going on in Chicago. I think it must have been Jack Master Farley and Steve Silk Hurley.
Okay.
Some of these cats that are icons in that realm of music.
Right.
And I liked that. I was digging that, but I never that's basically as far as it went. He went back to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
I transferred to Garfield, and house music went away because I just didn't have an exposure to it being in Seattle, and it was still fairly new. It hadn't really broken out everywhere by that time in the late '80s. But as I moved away from hip hop, after I became Muslim in the late '90s or the mid '90s.
Mm-hmm.
When I decided to get back into music a little bit, I had a friend of mine named Mike Evans, who's a house head, super house head. He's originally from Maryland, but he's been up here for a couple decades. And he's just got an encyclopedic knowledge of house music. And I would get tapes from him, and I started doing little demos, and was with a group called Altice, but nothing really happened with it. I left it. Then they began to do some stuff, but then that group folded. When I decided to reconnect with Mike, I think through Facebook probably, and this is probably 2009, 2010 maybe, and I said, man, he always believed in me as a vocalist, and really thought that I could do something as a vocalist in house music, and he knew I loved the music.
Right.
And so he came at me again like, hey, do you want to make a record? By this time he had actually gained a lot of connections in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
he had been at Househead for so many years, and he had met so many people, and then the stuff he'd done with Altice after I left had enabled him to get these connections.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Look, if you want to make a record, I can make it happen. We can actually get it out there. I've got these connections now." And I'm like, "Okay, well, let's get together and see what's what."
Mm-hmm.
Got together and with another cat, my man Kevin Wright. Shout out to Kevin Wright. He's also from Chicago. He's an engineer. Had his studio in his house, as everyone seems to have nowadays.
Right.
And cranked out a record, and it got picked up. So the ball kept rolling from there, and as of now, I think I'm on my sixth or seventh single.
Yeah.
With different record labels. And it's been great. It's not really a career. It's still, I consider it a hobby.
Right.
But it's another form of expression that I'm able to do, and I'm still doing it. I might even get get back into the hip hop a little bit too. Just strictly on a hobbyist basis. It's not the same type of deal as it used to be. When I was in Tribal, we were actually trying to do something and get somewhere. And
yeah, you want to win.
Yeah, and I have won. I've won because I have a family. I've won because I have, a life.
Right.
And thank God. And so I'm able to do these type of things really as a luxury.
Right.
And the fact that there are some record labels out there, they've been European record labels, respected labels, in fact, that have liked my stuff, liked my voice, and wanted to put it out, and to put it out. It's just kind of icing on the cake, and I'm really grateful and thankful for that. And when I see my stuff out there, and people in different parts of the world, South Africa, people saying they're listening to my stuff in South Africa, and listen to my stuff in Poland, and I'm seeing videos put up by the producers where they drop my record, and all of a sudden the place goes crazy. I'm like, wow.
Right.
I'm not getting rich off of it or anything like that, but it doesn't matter, because it's not I never was why I got into music at all from the first place, let alone house music. But it's another avenue.
Yeah.
It's something that I've loved house music for a very long time. I love soulful music, period. And there's many different types of house music. Soulful house music is what I've always gravitated towards. It's basically like church, over drum beats.
Right. Right.
Really, that's about as close as I can come to it, to explaining it properly. But it's just it gives me the same type of feeling and that endorphin rush when I hear a great record, a great vocal over a hot, crazy track from Masters at Work or from Audio Whores or from whoever, that I got when I would hear Lucchini,
right,
or when I would hear Mass Appeal. I've never been just a hip hop head. It's never been like that for me. It's always, collecting records was collecting records so I could hear new music,
right.
not for the sake of collecting. I don't care where the hell I get it from. I can get it from a 25-cent. Some of the best records I ever got were from quarter bins or dollar bins.
Man, those yeah. Remember, like they used to have the milk crate box. It was like 25-cent tapes in there.
Mm-hmm.
The best 25-cent pickup I ever had was the E-Rule Listen Up single.
Ooh.
It was a promo single.
Nice.
And again, man, that E-Rule record is a monster. It's a monster. And so yeah, it was a promo tape. Listen Up on the front side, Synopsis on the back side.
Synopsis.
Oh.
Synopsis was my joint. That was the one. That was one I like Listen Up too. Listen Up was filthy, but
so
shout out to E-Rule, man. He's dope.
Yeah, shout out to E-Rule.
King
Allah, his producer.
Yeah.
Shout out to Palace Records for never putting out the actual record and having one of the most E-Rule is like his first full length that came out after he left Palace. It's beautiful because it's got a scathing diatribe against everybody at Palace Records that fucked off the first record that was supposed to come out that never happened.
No, he went in on him, huh?
He absolutely went in on him, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I hope somewhere in the depth and the scope of the internet, somebody eventually gets a hold of that and puts it out, because otherwise it's never going to happen, and no one's ever going to understand that this guy could have had all the ingredients: dope voice, dope lyrics, dope production, unique perspective.
Yeah, a lot of them LA cats, especially like the Project Blowed cats.
Raskaz,
Hip Hop Clan, in the Hip Hop Clan, in the Hip Hop Clan.
Yeah, man, all those guys.
Got to see those. See, that's, traveling with Tribal, like down to Gavin Convention a couple times. I mean, we actually actually got to see some of these cats perform at the Good Life.
Yeah. Which
was amazing, because you hear all this stuff about the Good Life Cafe in LA, where all these dudes are freestyling and it's this
AC Alone, Ganja K,
Fat Jack, and all these dudes, with beats and rhymes, just ridiculous. And then you go down there and see it, and you see just how it was just this little shop. It was a health food store,
right.
And you couldn't cuss in there, or you get kicked off the stage. And if you were whacked, they'd say pass the mic or something like that, or get off. They'd tell you to get off the stage.
Right.
They wouldn't let you continue. Their voices would rise above yours, and you'd have to leave.
Yeah.
They had a system in place of anti-whackness, and then if you couldn't get in, then outside there'd be like 4 or 5, not 1 or 2, like 4 or 5 or 6 ciphers going on.
Yeah.
Large ciphers with like 20 cats in each one.
Yeah.
Filling up the parking lot, and it was just all. It was all hip hop. It was all love. And it was great to see things like that, and, instead of just hearing about it, getting a chance to go digging in the Gavin Convention, go to Haight-Ashbury, go to a record store. Oh, there's P Rock digging. Like, oh man, and you don't want to approach him because you're not going to be a sucker. It's like, oh, what are you digging for?
Yeah.
But you just like, wow, the dude's here. And
in that moment. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Seeing Matt, '94 when we went, there was mass appeal posters everywhere. All of Frisco, downtown Frisco was plastered with these things, and then get to see them. We were getting into clubs, all these showcases. We were getting into them for free. I don't know how it happened. I don't know how we were able to do it. We got into so many of them, and the one that I will always treasure is one of my most treasured hip hop memories. Period. Is we got into this theater in Frisco, and it was Gangstar didn't perform, but J. Rue performed, and Guru was there. And Premier did the first time I've ever seen them up close. They hadn't come to Seattle at that point, and seeing them, warm up the crowd and say, "Oh, I'm gonna do a sound check in front of y'all." This is what he normally does.
Yeah.
And can you hear this? And can you hear this? Yeah. And then sound man, turn this up, or turn on my monitor over here.
Yeah.
And then, oh my gosh, when he dropped "Come Clean."
Oh, that's a monster. You talk about monster records.
The ground shook. People went ape shit.
Yeah.
And it was just awesome. Me and Self, and we were all just like, man, we got to see that.
Yeah.
We got to experience that.
Yeah.
That was just one of the best hip hop memories I ever have.
How could it not be? That setting, that time, and that song was massive, and it was massive in terms of its sound, but it was also like a declaration. J. Rue, look it up. J. Rue and Big had beef over, ideology. That's a real thing.
Yeah.
And not to say that Big
had beef with the Fugees too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a real thing. But wow, what a moment, man, to be there for that. That's crazy.
Yeah. just ridiculous. So and I mean other things like being on stage at Bumbershoot and things like this. And, it's been a great experience living life and loving hip hop, loving music in general. It's been such an integral part of my life, and it continues to be to maybe to a lesser degree, just because I want it that way. I don't want it to consume me. I have other things that I need to do
Right.
with my life, but I always have it there, and it's always a part of who I am, and I don't think that's ever going to change.
Right.
So,
And I think that's just such a it's a beautiful character trait, and it's something that I think you can kind of look up and down through the roster of people that were involved with Tribal and see them still connected to a creative output. And that's
Vida's doing this thing still. Doesn't need to be. And the thing is, Vida's never wanted to be like the man. He's always like, which is so ironic because his mother was a photographer, might still be a photographer, but he would always be in the back of the pictures.
Yes.
He would not want to be in front. He'd always kind of hide away, and if he could get away with it, he wouldn't be in the picture probably.
Yeah.
But and I always thought that was hilarious, but because he's just so full of talent, but he at the same time, he's so humble about it and not really trying to show out like that, And
that's okay. And that's okay. It's so long as so long as there are other people, I think I don't know. It's like I think it's important to acknowledge people while they're still around to hear it.
Yeah.
And I I have made no bones about the fact that that you guys in Tribal are just like heroes to me. Like heroes to me, because when it occurred to me that there was this young men and women, shout out to THC, young men and women that came from the same place that I did in the same city, who were capable of putting out this this expression that was just that resonated so deeply within me. How can you not be inspired? How can you not be inspired? Unfortunately, it didn't inspire me to rap, thank God. But it inspired me to, to try to give back to a culture that gave so much to me.
That's what's up.
And so, the larger part of this whole thing is to talk about and acknowledge and recognize people's contributions while they're still here.
Yeah.
So we're gonna keep running on that.
And as a coda to that, I guess, understand that there are some people in Tribal who are still doing things. I mean, people know about Topspin. He's out there, DJing. Go support him. Vida is still producing. Vida has still got, he's got a studio.
Infinite still putting out music.
Infinite. Go check for my man, Infinite, man.
Yep.
Shout out to Infinite. Oh boy's the man, straight up.
And
lyrics.
And there's
delivery,
nothing. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a lifelong attachment to expression that happens to come out through hip hop. I think a lot of people kind of look at it like, Jay's old or like KRS is old, and it's like that's okay. It's okay for you to continue to be connected to this art form and its output when you're not in your 20s. It concerns me when people kind of look down with scorn on older cats that continue to rhyme as if that endeavor is not
like you shouldn't be doing it anymore.
Yeah.
When it can rhyme circles around you.
Yeah.
Literally can rhyme circles around you. Try telling that to one of you young cats go up to Infinite, tell him he can't rhyme or he shouldn't be rhyming anymore.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. Make sure I get you on my cell phone. You'll be on World Star in a minute.
World Star.
World Star.
World Star.
No.
Yeah, I mean it's just
crazy skills.
It's just expression. It's like if your expression at this point is soulful house music, or if it's touching a mic, actually rhyming in a hip hop capacity, whatever it is, we don't degrade Johnny Cash when he's in the later stages of his life, about to die, recording with Trent Reznor. We applaud that.
Or Rick Rubin, yeah.
Yeah, we applaud those things, and it concerns me when we look at hip hop through this perspective where it's like it's only valid up until like a 25-year-old shelf date.
Yeah, nonsense.
That's bullshit.
Nonsense. My man Fleet of Party, shout out to
Fleet of Party, shout out to Shabazz Coalition.
You know, I've known him, his whole family since I was 10 years old, way before rhyming, you know, and that dude, he's still doing it.
Yep.
He's making quality material, man. He's making quality material, and that's the bottom line.
And the beautiful thing about Party's records is that you can tell that there is there's an overt emphasis on like these are the codes that I ingested, and this is what I'm going to continue to put it out that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's
he's
a
doing
beautiful
it his
thing.
way. He's doing it his way. He's not trying to hear, you know, oh, you got to do it this way or you got to sound like this. He's doing it all himself.
Yep.
He's putting it out himself, and it looks great. It sounds great, and I applaud him for it.
Yeah.
And the same, you know, Infinite, you know, he's doing the same thing.
Yep.
You know, and every, you know, folks at Tribal are still doing stuff. Not everyone, you know, some people have stepped away from it, and that's okay too. Life is life, you know. You got to live your life however you want to live it. You know, and everything's still valid. All that expression is still valid. You know, and I give a salute to all my brothers and sisters in Tribal and in the whole Seattle hip hop community. You know, one love to everybody. It was a pleasure, you know, creating, you know, alongside all of you, and seeing, you know, the massive dedication, the massive heart that all y'all had. Everyone from King Otto to Jace to Sean Malik, you know, Shabazz Coalition, you know, just all the way up into Source of Labor, Jasiri Media Group, everything, yep. You know, GJ Kamikaze, you know, just everyone, you know, Upendu on the beats. I mean, we could make a whole Bandcamp page just of Upendu's beats.
Yes, you could.
From that MPC 60, that just will knock, that today in 2014 will knock your socks off. Yep. And I guarantee you, if you know anything about hip hop, you hear these beats that this dude was making in 94, 95 that will just knock your socks. He had the damn MPC sounding like it was a freaking slave ship. He's having sounds like the chains, you know, and the creaking of the ship. And I'm like, looking at him like, are you serious, dude? You are just tripping, man. You know, and plus he's an artist. Yeah. You know, plus a bassist. I mean, multiple talents, not just one. I mean, these cats in the community have multiple talents. Yeah. You know, it's never been just about the rhyme. It's about expression, and hip hop was just the means by which they chose to express at that time, alongside of whatever else they may have been doing. Yeah. And so this thing with me and Soulful House is just another expression of, you know, something I'm doing now, that moves me right now. Right. You know, and it's all good. It's because it's not separated. It's music. You know, it's art, and in a larger sense, it's just art. However you want to, whatever names or separations you want to put on it, the reality is it's all art, and it's all valid, and it's all good. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess what we're saying is, shout out to love, shout out to expression, shout out to no doubt, shout out to being able to put forth your own ideas. And being brave enough to make that step, and surrounding yourself with people that support that decision, because it's something that we should be. I mean, I don't know. You know, if you don't listen to music that comes out of human beings that reside from this big ball of community that we have in Seattle, there's a vast spectrum to that expression, and you should be able to take pride in it. Mm-hmm. All of us, because I mean that's the reflection thing. You know, it's like those dynasty horns from Lucchini. You know, you're giving the listener something when you put that forward. Yeah. The Shelly Man, you know, the drip drops on the Come Clean. Yeah. Oh. You know, the Wu-Tang Clan. Yeah, yeah. You know, these things you hear, these vibrations you hear, and it just touches you immediately. The first time you hear it, those are the ones that are the timeless records. There's others that might take a while to digest, and you appreciate them, but the ones you really, really remember are the ones that just hit you. Like, you know.
Yeah, like the piano part on Continuations.
Yeah, that's Vita.
Um,
That's all Vita.
you know that record on the 14 Fathoms Deep compilation, which we don't have on the Bandcamp yet, but I don't think I'm going to get sued, so we probably should just put it up.
Yeah.
Um,
Not.
if not, you can find it anyways. But that Continuations record on the 14 Fathoms compilation is definitely one of those records that, you know, the first time I heard that, going through college and going through some shit and being like, okay,
Yeah.
relentlessly I continue, go on, okay, okay, I get it. So this is, you know, this is
I thought
this
it
is
would
the way
just
that
be a great, you know, a good idea just to have that as a mantra going through the record. And then, you know, Vita, you know, I told Vita this. Vita, you know, whenever someone would come in the studio, you know, he'd have them, you know, do, if they, you know, they're down for it, they do that. So you have all these different voices doing it, and it just it came out exactly better, in fact, than what I envisioned for it.
It's a beautiful record, man.
It's like all of us in the whole community. I love that record for this reason, because to me it's like the whole Seattle hip hop community. You know, my friends, my associates, my comrades at that time were kind of just making a statement. You know, that it's not going to stop. You know, that it's always up, it's always in here, and it's going to be expressed this way, and you're going to just keep getting it.
Yeah.
You know,
What a
real simple phrase,
record.
but it blossoms into something more than that when you think about it, the deeper meaning.
For sure, for sure. And you know, it's a wonderful thing because it touched me, it inspired me when I was in my late teens, early 20s. I was 20. I was in college when that came out, right? I think maybe. And it, you know, and it's still it's just got an everlasting genuineness of that expression. Relentlessly, I continue. Like,
my joint on there was A New Day.
Yeah.
A Crew Clockwise. Shout out to King Otto. Shout out to Specs. Shout out to the whole TBC, man. Being One, everybody. They were, you know, they're underrated big time. They were they had so much talent, and that crew is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that record is so long, but it was so Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, listening to that with my headphones on, and being on the bus going to go shop for some records, and it's raining outside, and listening to that record, it was just bliss, pure bliss. And even to this day, there'll be times when it's rainy outside, or I'm going to work, and I'll pop that sucker in there, and I just have the same feeling all over again. And that's what it's all about, man.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a dope underground Seattle hip hop record that evokes memories, and I can create new ones as I listen to it again and again and again over the years.
For sure. And it's a crazy thing that you know, I would imagine that when you're in there recording Continuations, or, you know, any of these other joints, especially as a young man, and probably don't have the perspective to think, this thing is kind of indelible. You know, this thing's going to be it's going to be there and be present for a long time, and it's going to resonate that way.
Yeah, I think,
you know,
I think it's rare if you get any kind of artist, if you know, when you make something that you're thinking outside of the now.
Yeah.
You know, when you're making it.
Well, you probably have to be, right?
Yeah, I know there's exceptions. I mean, I know, like, I've read and seen things that, you know, where people who were involved with the making of what's going on, they knew as soon as they made it that they had made history, that they made something that was going to just change the way people looked at Marvin, and change the way people looked at Motown, and change the way people looked at music, because it was so powerful.
Yeah.
But that's exceedingly rare.
Yeah.
Exceedingly rare. But yeah, you know, you make a record that you're happy with, that moves you, and then you put it out there in the hopes that it moves others, and you never know. I mean, it trips me out when I see, you know, the physics talking about how, you know, Do the Math inspired them. You know, when I first read, you know, your blog, you know, Swan Lake,
Shout out to my super dusty, non-updated blog.
And just see the power that the stuff that we were just creating in a basement, has, and the effect it has on people. Even Macklemore, and I see the town, and I see all the imagery he has of all the flyers, and I was at 80% of those parties.
Yeah.
I was there, and I'm just and I had a lot of those flyers too, but of course those went away in the course of moving 10 times in 10 years. But those memories, never really go away, and seeing how people can get affected by it, it's humbling. It's really humbling. I have a lot of respect for what you're doing. Trying to keep this going, and trying to add on and talk with those of us who were there and who were doing it.
Oh, thank you.
And it's just an honor to even be included and to be thought of as someone who could inspire anybody. I hope to be an inspiration to my children, obviously, as
Right.
any father would want to be.
Yep.
Inspiration, to my wife, my family. But outside of that, it's anything outside of that, that's a real bonus. And it's just, wow, that's great. Thank you for for that love, and thank you for that respect. And I give it right back to you.
Appreciate that, brother. I appreciate that.
No doubt, man.
Well, we're really getting real lovey-dovey here. We should probably.
Oh no.
So yeah, shout out to love, shout out to respect, shout out to appreciation. Tell people you love them while they're here, because this dance does not last forever.
No.
And maybe that's something that is proving more relevant to my life as I get older. But yeah, it's just the train stops eventually, and we don't know what's on the next phase of it. So while you're here, if there are people that inspire you and you appreciate them, tell them.
Let them know.
Let them know.
Let them know. In no uncertain terms, just from your heart.
Yep. And so yeah, to that I say shout out to Seattle, shout out to the town, shout out to Vitamin D, shout out to Jake One, shout out to Bean One, shout out to King Otto. Like, I mean, it's just like
It goes on and on.
yeah,
on and on and
it's
on.
like I say the same shit over and over and over, but it bears repeating, and it bears repeating. I'm going to continue to bang that gong because again, it's the same thing. I keep coming back to this general sense of this the Seattle community is something that we need to appreciate ourselves a little bit more. Maybe, I think, kind of, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a little bit. There's more support now, certainly, than there was in the time that we were doing it. Would be empty shows, but there would be some people there, and they like the stuff, but you just don't know how far it goes. How far those tapes that you make, that you spend all night putting the J cards into the cassette tapes, try to get everything done and put them out there and slang them and sell them, get them to all the mom and pop shops and whatnot. And how it can affect someone. And so it's important for anyone who's a practitioner of hip hop to appreciate everyone that's around you, and it's important for those who are just listening to hip hop to appreciate what you're hearing, because you might not hear it again.
Yep.
It might stop, and you might have to go on to the next one, but just be appreciative of it, and try to learn lessons from whatever you hear in the lyrics. Try to learn lessons from whatever feelings you get from the music, the tracks that you hear, and try to translate that into love for each other. Help make the world something better than what it is.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. When you come right down to it, that's the whole point. I don't care if it sounds corny or whatever. I'm old enough to where I don't give a rat's ass how corny it sounds.
Right.
It's the truth.
It is. This expression in this facet or other ones is capable of greatness, of great divine things, and just appreciate it. So shout out to the creators, shout out to people that are brave enough to put that message on tape. I am Devin Morgan. This is James Browne, a.k.a. JM Browne, a.k.a. Truth, a.k.a. a really solid human being. I really appreciate you coming through.
My pleasure, man.
Yeah, so
thank you.
It's my pleasure. So go pick up that Wipe the Needle with JM Browne record, which is easily available on iTunes, as well as some other ones.
Latest one is called Love for You.
Yes, indeed.
It's on Funky Rabbit Records.
And with a name like Funky Rabbit.
With a PH, not a F.
Yeah, the old school way. PH with a funk. That's the way to do it. So again, we are the Do the Math Podcast. Find us on Twitter at Do the Math Show, at all these other places at Do the Math Show, because Do the Math Podcast is one character too long for Twitter, and I'm not trying to make it hard for you guys. So there it is. Love yourself. Love everybody else. Don't be a dick. Have a good night. Peace.
Peace.
Five come to the tribal dum dum.